All right, let's get it kicked off then. Hi, folks. So I wanted to tell you about an exciting new development in the world of Cloud Custodian. Traditionally, Cloud Custodian has looked at your cloud footprint, and regardless of whatever tool you use to provision it, if you run the console, if you're using Terraform, if Kubernetes provisioned it, um, Cloud Custodian was like, let organizations pick whatever the best tool is for them and let them adopt that. But I think we realized that, the fastest way to fix a problem is to fix it closer pre-deployment, closer to the source, closer to the developer. And so this notion of shift left and DevSecOps. And so we wanted to be able to enable organizations to address governance earlier in their pipelines as it enables those issues to be solved faster. To that end, we've been working on a new provider and a new CLI for Cloud Custodian for that purpose. And I'd like to introduce you to C7N Left. First of all, we are in alpha early stage preview. We are not making compatibilities about our CLI interface, any of that stuff. What does it do? It allows you to write custodian policies against Terraform with some additional capabilities that are currently unique to this provider. And then it's got a separate CLI, which is very developer centric as far as its outputs, and also has the ability to work directly with CI tools. And I'm hoping to demonstrate that if I can get all the things to work. As far as the policies, I look at, we decided to support Terraform first because it is cross-provider like Cloud Custodian, and it seems to have a dominant share of the market, depending on which provider you're in. I think in Google, it's probably about 90 to 100%, because I don't think they actually really do development on their own tool anymore. In Azure, it's significant. In AWS, it's significant, where significant is effectively close to majority. As far as how we do it, we experimented with a few different ways of doing this. We wanted to do this for a while. We originally tried to do some Python, like do parsing HCL in Python. That proved to be both complex and only half the battle, frankly. A lot of what you need to do in Terraform is actually interpret the language. And so we decided that the best way to do this was actually to reuse the Terraform implementation. And we have a Python Golang extension to do that parse eval step. Let's see. And okay, so the next is going to live demo. So demo gods be good. If not, I've got a backup slide. We'll see. All right. So I happen to have a policy here. This is looking at a Terraform AWS S3 bucket, and it's going to flag anything that has server-side encryption configuration not configured correctly. So encryption at rest is absent, and therefore we're going to flag it. We have a new CLI. Why? Because regular custodian CLI is really geared towards looking at the cloud resources, and those can be fairly arbitrary as far as shape, form, output. And we wanted to get something that was a little bit more source-centric. So this is actually going to point out to exactly what the actual issues are, and actually highlight the code, point to the exact lines that are having an issue, the policy that's having an issue. And we also are now supporting to sort of, you have a directory of policies, just give us the whole directory. And that works out of the box. We also have some additional outputs here using GitHub Actions for your CI tool. We already support that right now, which is this ability to do this particular syntax. And if you're using GitHub or GitHub Enterprise, this will actually do like line-by-line annotation on a pull request directly to show you what the issue is. And of course, we have JSON output if you want to debug stuff and look at the raw output. But the other interesting thing, which I know has been a request, is we also support being able to do multiple resources in the same policy, and even being able to do things like, here, let's take a look at this policy. So this is actually going to flag any AWS resource written in your Terraform which doesn't have a tags block present. So let's see. Let's pick something. Oh, what did I do? First. Sorry, early days. That one has multiple block providers. Okay, so nope. I don't know what this error is. What did I do before? Sorry, demo guys are not kind. Okay, so that was fine. And so this, sorry through the mix-ups there, but we just used that wildcard policy now against two different Terraform root directories. One where it did actually have a tag on the resource, the S3 bucket, and then a separate one where they did not have tags and it flagged those resources appropriately. And what else? So I think in this context, hold on a second, I'm going to switch back and go back to my presentation slides. So where are we with this? This is going to be included in the next Custodian release. It is already in trunk, and we are still working through various permutations of Terraform as far as dynamics and whatnot, but we've been able to evaluate it against a large swath of Terraform out there because we're using the Terraform parser. It is pretty robust and resilient against all kinds of real Terraform in the real world, let's say. And additionally, we want to also support things like propagating down provider tags, being able to actually look up cloud resources, so things that are in data blocks and whatnot, being able to actually resolve those. So if you simply see a security group ID on an EC2 that you're in your Terraform, that you're actually able to resolve that into some of the richness of policies on the graph. But I hope this gives a feel for the flavor of what C7M left is able to do. We're also looking at expanding it out beyond Terraform. Probably the next target is going to be CloudFormation or potentially the new Azure Research Template language. But hopefully that's a preview of where we like to go. And we think that to be well governed in the cloud, you kind of want both, because someone can still walk in the console, but being able to address problems earlier in the pipeline is just a fantastic capability that helps improve productivity and time to remediation. So I'll take a stop and pause there and I'll take a look if there's any questions. I don't. Actions.
Looking for questions.
Oh, wow. There's a couple. Okay. Wildcard resource matching. In this context, the wildcard capability is because we're not doing a bunch of API calls, and we're not the same output interface where we evaluate metrics for each policy. This is effectively an in-memory graph that we're constructing. Being able to evaluate policies across lots of things is really easy. For other providers that are actually doing API calls for each resource type that's involved, we have a different strategy of getting to that. And so it wouldn't necessarily feel the same because we have to do some more work. But it is conceivable to do that in other providers, but behind the scenes for the other providers, it'll actually be policy expansion, whereas in this, the actual policy itself is multi-resource natively. GitLab CI, the intent is to take feature requests and contributions to sort of fill out things. We are actually running a survey, which I should probably do a link to if I could remember the URL.
I'll snag it. Keep going.
Right, if you could drop it in the chat, like we're trying to see what people are using. I think we've seen a lot of GitHub Enterprise, GitLab, Jenkins, as far as like code hosting CI tools. So definitely always curious to understand what's useful for people. Okay, actions. So actions right now would effectively just be notified. Like the actual output of this is designed to run as a CI tool, like running this as a GitHub action and have it do the exit code one and actually fail CI directly there. So I think there's definitely a notion of getting to notify, but a lot of the action just is like most CI tools. You exit error code one and CI stops. And then just getting the rich outputs in for code reviewers and for the pull request author to understand where things failed is sort of the goal. Definitely open to exploring additional action capabilities, but right now I think our initial target is just focusing on the CI capability set, because that helps people get to implementing this sort of in that shift left capacity. So CloudFormation is probably Q1 next year. I think it's going to take us a little bit of time to get this solidified, just even on Terraform, because Terraform is a fairly dynamic language. CDK support is an open question. I think we'd have to have people synth and then run this on synth on the synthetic outputs to get the CloudFormation support. CDK and Pulumi both support arbitrary languages. The challenge with something like CDK is that going from your source language to, like, CDK effectively generates CloudFormation underneath the hood, and there isn't a source map from that output back to the underlying source format. So you get a JSON YAML file, let's say, at the end of your CDK pipeline, and that's what we would evaluate here. The challenge is that going back from that output there back to your source definition requires support from CDK on source maps. I have an issue which I will drop into the Custodian Slack if you want to flag it for your account manager to help get that more visible. And as far as like some type of thing like overlay, potentially, like a find and replace tag. Potentially, we're starting to, like, we are doing that initially with the Kubernetes emission controller stuff, which Sunny is going to walk through and later today. So I think that has some merit. The challenge with something like this is because you're in the source format, like you're not necessarily in the deploy. This is static analysis per se. So because of that, like, if we modify the source, or which isn't necessarily high fidelity to whatever the original format is, or B, we're not in the pipeline to actually do the deploy itself. Like, say we're in CI, not CD, doesn't always necessarily make sense. Potentially, there could be things like being able to display what the user should do more distinctly. Like, instead of having check tags over here, we actually said something like, hey, these are the required tags. And in the JSON output, you see the full policy and all that information. So actually there are things like that. But the problem with this is because we're operating on source, like direct source edits against arbitrary things, is not necessarily tangible per se, versus simply giving the user as much information as possible to remediate on themselves. So this is effectively a prevent mode, not a remediate mode. All right. I think I'm at time, so I'm going to take a stop. Maybe I'm over time. Cheers. Thank you.